In the summer of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus were filled with excitement as they closed on what they believed was their forever home, a grand six-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard in the idyllic suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. The house, nestled in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, boasted elegant architecture, spacious rooms, and a sprawling yard where their 3 children could safely play. Moreover, the location held sentimental value for Maria, who had grown up just a few blocks away. Everything seemed perfect, as though they had finally found the home that would cradle a future full of comfort and joy. However, that picture of domestic bliss began to fracture just days after closing the sale. Derek, who had stayed late at the new house painting some walls and checking on renovations, decided to take a break and check the mailbox. Inside, among a few bills and junk mail, was a white envelope with no return address. The letter inside was typed, and its opening line was jarring. "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." What initially seemed like an oddly formal note soon spiraled into something far more sinister. The writer claimed to have been watching the house for decades, stating that their father had watched it in the 1960s and their grandfather before that. They referred to the house as if it were a living entity, something sacred and historic, and claimed it was now their turn to watch over it. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in, the letter read, before cryptically adding, "It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet?" The letter closed with a chilling threat. "I will be watching." Startled and deeply disturbed, Derek rushed home and showed the letter to Maria. The couple, gripped by a growing sense of dread, contacted the police immediately. The responding officer read the letter in disbelief, then advised the couple not to tell anyone about it, especially their new neighbors, who were now all potential suspects. Though they hadn't officially moved in yet, the Broadduses began to see the house through new eyes, not as a haven, but as a target. As the days passed, more letters began to arrive, each more personal and invasive than the last. The watcher seemed to know intimate details about the family. They referenced the Broaddus children by nickname, mentioned the renovations inside the house, and even described where each family member was located at specific times. "I see that you have already flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be," one letter read. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy." The writer even questioned which child would be the first to be sacrificed, a line that sent a chill down the Broadduses' spines. Frightened and feeling violated, the couple decided not to move into the house. Instead, they stayed with Maria's parents nearby while keeping up the mortgage payments and trying to figure out what to do. They hired private investigators, reached out to former FBI agents, and even installed cameras and motion detectors around the property. Every neighbor was scrutinized. Could it be the elderly woman across the street? The reclusive man next door? The family behind them who had lived in the neighborhood for years? While some neighbors sympathized, others grew suspicious. After all, the Broadduses hadn't moved in and yet were claiming they were being stalked. Rumors began to circulate and theories multiplied. Some believed the letters were a hoax, perhaps even concocted by the Broadduses themselves in an attempt to back out of a purchase they regretted. Others thought the watcher could be a disgruntled potential buyer who had lost the house to the Broadduses and was now exacting psychological revenge. Even so, the tone of the letters continued to evolve. At times, the watcher seemed angry and threatening, warning the Broadduses that they still had not brought young blood into the house. At other times, the voice was oddly sentimental, expressing a strange reverence for the home and suggesting that its true essence had been disturbed by outsiders. The ambiguity made it impossible to predict what the watcher would do next, which only deepened the couple's fear. Meanwhile, the investigation stalled. The police traced one letter to a nearby post office, but security footage offered no useful clues. A DNA test was performed on one envelope and indicated that the sender might be a woman, but it was not a match for Maria Broaddus or any other obvious suspect. Interviews with neighbors turned up no credible leads, and as months turned into years, the case remained unsolved. Frustration mounted. The Broadduses were living in limbo, unable to sell the house, too afraid to move in, and burdened by mounting debt and emotional trauma. In a desperate move, they tried to sell the house, but potential buyers were scared off once the Watcher story leaked. At one point, the Broadduses filed a lawsuit against the previous owners, arguing that they had failed to disclose the first letter which had arrived before the closing. The case drew widespread media attention, and with that attention came a new wave of skepticism, scorn, and public scrutiny. Online forums lit up with conspiracy theories. Late-night hosts joked about the Watcher. The Broaddus family, once just a normal suburban household, was now the center of a real-life horror story unfolding in broad daylight. Eventually, the Broadduses leased the house to tenants who agreed to live there despite the history, but only after installing more security systems. For a while, the letters stopped. Then, in 2017, a new tenant reported receiving a fourth letter. This one was more ominous than ever. The Watcher claimed to have heard of the public speculation and mockery of the Broadduses and expressed renewed interest in the house. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you feel sick day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. The message was clear. The Watcher was still watching. Though the house has since changed hands, the identity of the Watcher has never been uncovered. To this day, the case remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in suburban America. Not because of overt violence, but because of the deeply unsettling invasion of privacy, the psychological torment, and the ever-present feeling that someone, somewhere, is always watching. The Broadduses eventually moved on and found a new home elsewhere, but the trauma never fully left them. As they once put it, we were the victims. We were being terrorized, but no one believed us. The Watcher house continues to haunt Westfield, not just in urban legends or horror stories, but in the very real fear that sometimes the scariest monsters don't live in shadows. They live next door, watching from behind the curtains, hidden behind friendly smiles, and waiting, always waiting, to make you feel unsafe in your own home. That concludes the first story. Now, take a deep breath. It's time to begin the second one. I never thought I'd write this down. Some nights, I still hear her voice. Not like the first time I heard it, laughing, full of life, but now like a whisper through the trees. You think you forget. You don't. Not when you take something you shouldn't have. Not when the world goes silent in the places where it used to scream. I remember that Halloween night better than I remember yesterday. Funny how memory works. Or maybe it's guilt. Or maybe it's something worse. Something that wraps itself around your mind like cold fingers and never lets go. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not in State College. Not on that street. Not in that parking lot. But I was. It was cold. The kind of cold that sharpens your thoughts and slows your body. My hands were freezing around the steering wheel. I'd been driving all night, with no place to go, just a hollow ache in my chest, and too many thoughts I didn't want. I pulled into the gas station on College Avenue. That's when I saw her. She was small, dressed in white, pink, and bunny ears. Her face was flushed. Not drunk, but tired. Happy tired. Like she'd been dancing, laughing, living. She held a small handbag, phone in one hand, and she looked over her shoulder once or twice as if unsure whether she was being followed. She didn't notice me at first. I was just another car in a sea of headlights. But when she crossed in front of me, she smiled. Not at me, but maybe through me. I don't know what it was, but it stuck. It was like someone had dropped color into a black and white world. Her smile lodged itself into my skull. I don't know what made me follow her. No, that's a lie. I know exactly what did. The silence, the loneliness, the emptiness. You can feel invisible your whole life, and then someone makes you feel seen for just 1 second, and that second warps everything. It changes who you are. I watched her walk down West Clinton Avenue. I kept my distance. At one point she stopped, fished in her purse, maybe for keys. She kept turning her head like she heard something. Maybe she did. Maybe she heard me. I was always quiet when I wanted to be. I parked at the edge of the block and got out. She was gone by then, or at least out of sight. I walked the direction she'd gone. A row of houses, dim porch lights, the faint sound of music from one last party. I checked my watch. Nearly 5 a.m. Then I saw her again. She was standing at the front of a townhouse, maybe hers, trying to unlock the door. Her hands were shaking. I don't know why. Maybe the cold. I should have turned around, but I didn't. I stepped forward and said something like, "Hey, need help?" She flinched, startled, said no, smiled again, but this time it was thinner, cautious. I told her I lived nearby, that I saw her drop something. I don't remember if I actually said that. The words didn't matter. I think what scared her was that I didn't leave. She opened the door, started to go in, and that's when it happened. I don't remember the moment exactly. It's like a film that cuts and skips. One moment she was there, the next she wasn't. There was a struggle. I remember that much. I remember grabbing her. I remember the look in her eyes. Not fear. Not immediately. Confusion. That's what broke me. She didn't scream. I told myself I was just going to talk to her. Maybe see her again. Maybe, God, I don't know. Tell her she mattered. That she made someone feel something for the first time in years. But that's not what happened. What happened was something cold and monstrous. Something I can't justify. I took her. I took her away from the place she belonged. I drove her out past the edge of town, beyond the trees, into the place where people stopped looking. The road narrowed and turned to gravel, and the silence grew heavier than the night. I kept telling myself I'd bring her back, that she was just scared, that once I explained it, she'd understand. She didn't. She cried. I remember her whispering things I didn't understand, maybe in Korean, maybe just prayer. I don't know. I remember thinking that if I let her go, she'd tell someone. And then I made the decision. The one I can't take back. I didn't mean to hurt her. I swear to God I didn't. But I did. It wasn't fast. It wasn't clean. It wasn't anything like it looks in the movies. There was pain for both of us. There was begging on both sides. And then there was nothing. Just the sound of the wind in the trees and the echo of her voice still trembling in the air. I buried her. Not far from the old highway. Not deep. I didn't have time. I thought it would be temporary, that I'd come back, that I'd do it right. But I never did. And then the world moved on. The flyers went up, the campus mourned. The police asked questions, and I stayed silent, year after year after year. Do you know what it's like to carry someone's last breath in your lungs, to hear it when you try to sleep, to feel it in your bones every time you pass someone who looks like her? Someone small, someone kind. You don't forget. You rot from the inside. Every Halloween I stay inside. I lock the doors. I don't watch the news. I don't answer the phone. Because every year I hear her voice again. Laughing, crying, calling for someone who will never find her. Sometimes I think I see her, in reflections, in dreams, in faces in crowds. Sometimes I wonder if this is hell, if she's still out there, watching me like I watched her that night. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted someone to know. And maybe, just maybe, if someone reads this, they'll remember her not as the girl who vanished, not as the missing bunny from Halloween, but as a real person, a spark in the dark. Her name was Cindy, and I took her, and I can never give her back. Edge. The story fades into silence, but don't rest just yet. Close your eyes. Let the dark settle in, because the next one is already waiting. I never imagined I'd put these words to paper. Not after all this time. But some nights, when the silence is thick and the shadows stretch long, I still hear her voice. Not like it was then. Full of life. Laughing, sometimes pleading, but now just a faint whisper riding on the wind. And it's unbearable. It was October 2015. The air was crisp, the kind of chill that makes you pull your jacket tighter, even in the afternoon. The town of Chillicothe was already wearing its Halloween disguise. Pumpkins on porches, fake cobwebs draped over bushes, and orange lights flickering against the darkening sky. There was an energy in the air, a restless excitement that seemed to float from street to street. Kids giggled in costumes, their voices echoing down the alleys, and neighbors exchanged nods as they prepared for the night's trick-or-treaters. Me? I was just a man lost in his own shadow. I was 27 years old, but I felt older. Life hadn't been kind. Days blurred together. Jobs came and went. Friends slipped away. There was a hollow inside me, one I tried to fill with temporary things. Bottles, late-night drives, whatever distractions I could find. It was during one of those aimless nights that I met Rebecca. Rebecca Cade, a small woman with a fragile smile, bright eyes that held a sadness you couldn't ignore. She was 31, but life had weathered her in ways that showed beyond her years. There was a kindness about her, though, a warmth that made you want to protect her, even if you barely knew her. Our paths crossed at a local gathering, nothing special. But we talked, really talked. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something. Connection, maybe hope. Rebecca was open about her struggles, learning disabilities, past mistakes, and a battle with addiction that she fought daily. She had a son she loved fiercely, a little boy who was her light. For a while, our conversations became a lifeline. We'd meet up, sometimes just to sit and talk about nothing. Those moments were the closest I'd come to feeling normal in years. But connections like that are fragile. One night, we found ourselves near the old electric substation on North Brownell Street. It was a quiet place, the kind of spot where the world felt miles away. We were sitting on the cracked concrete, surrounded by rusting metal and dead leaves. The night sky stretched overhead, heavy with stars. At first, the conversation was easy, but beneath the surface, tension bubbled. The past clawed its way into the present. Old fears, regrets, and frustrations spilled out in words sharper than either of us wanted. I remember the moment when everything shifted. Her words cut deep, more than I wanted to admit. Anger welled up inside me, a dark storm I couldn't control. I reached down and grabbed a rock from the ground, roughly the size of a grapefruit. My hand trembled as I lifted it. I didn't want to hurt her. I told myself I didn't. But when I swung it, everything went wrong. The rock connected with her face, and she stumbled back, blood rushing from a wound near her eye. Panic seized me. She tried to run, terrified, desperate to escape. She ran toward the chain-link fence that enclosed the substation, the barbed wire glinting in the moonlight. She reached the fence and tried to climb, but her sleeve caught on the barbed wire at the top, and she was left hanging, suspended like some grotesque Halloween decoration. I was frozen, unable to move, unable to help. She was dying, and I was the cause. The next morning, workers came to repair parts of the substation. They saw the body hanging from the fence and assumed it was a Halloween prank, some cruel, tasteless decoration. It wasn't until they got close that they realized the horror. The police were called. The investigation was swift. The bloody rock was found nearby, and witnesses started to come forward. It wasn't long before the evidence pointed back to me. I was arrested and charged. Now, sitting in this cell, the weight of everything presses down on me. I relive that night over and over, every word, every sound. I hear Rebecca's voice whispering through the darkness, accusing me silently. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want the world to know the truth. What happens when pain and anger mix? When you lose control, when you make a decision that changes lives forever. Rebecca deserved better. Her son deserved a mother. And I destroyed it all. I wish I could say I had an excuse, a reason that could make what I did easier to understand. But the truth is, there's no justification for taking a life. No reason that can erase the horror of what happened that night. Before that night, Rebecca and I weren't perfect. We had our ups and downs like any two people trying to find a connection in a fractured world. But I never imagined it would end like this, with her hanging from a fence, mistaken for a Halloween prop. I remember the way her eyes looked right before the blow, confused, scared, pleading. I wanted to stop. I wanted to say sorry. But my fists moved before my mind caught up. We were sitting on the cold concrete by the substation, the wind rustling dead leaves, the hum of distant traffic mixing with the quiet. She had just told me something that struck a nerve. Something about her son, about how hard it was to raise him alone, about the mistakes she'd made. I felt anger, not just at her, but at myself, at life, at everything that had gone wrong. The rock in my hand was heavy. I told myself I wouldn't use it, but then everything exploded in a moment I can't fully explain. The sound of it hitting her skin, the thud, the crack, haunts me. She stumbled, blood spilling down her face, staining her pale skin. She tried to run, but the fence was close and she went for it, scrambling up. That's when her sleeve caught on the barbed wire. She hung there, trembling, her breath shallow, eyes wide in terror. And I just stood there. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The workers found her the next day, thinking she was a prank, a decoration for Halloween. I can't even begin to describe what that thought did to me. That my crime was mistaken for a joke. The police came, and soon my world came crashing down. I was arrested, handcuffed, thrown into a cell where silence screamed louder than anything else. Sitting there, I kept replaying every moment, every word, every choice, every chance I had to stop it and didn't. Rebecca had a son, a little boy who lost his mother because of me. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers her, if he feels the loss the way I feel it. I'm haunted not just by her death, but by what I stole. Her chance to live, to love, to be a mother. The future she was supposed to have, gone. The trial was brutal, my mistakes laid bare for the world to see. No excuses, no justification, just the harsh truth. Now, years later, I live with the weight of my actions. The days bleed into nights, and the nights are filled with whispers. Rebecca's voice carried on the wind, reminding me what I took from this world. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I write this confession so that people know the truth, so that maybe, just maybe, someone else might see the cost of anger left unchecked. Rebecca deserved so much more than what I gave her, and I will carry that guilt until the end of my days.